Hey students, this is our notes video for nutrition. So we're going to be kind of closing out digestion with what do we actually do with the food that we eat. So this is what nutrition is. As part of this section or unit, you will be keeping a food diary for 3 days and conducting an analysis of that. It's a project. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your schedule for the rest of this unit. This will carry you to May the 4th, which is the Monday. On that day, I'll submit new information on the urinary system. So from now until that time, you should be working on nutrition. Part of that, you'll need to keep a food diary for 3 days. So just don't get to the last minute and run out of the days. So I just wanted to give that heads up to you. So if you have your notes, you can fill them in as we go along. They'll look a little different. I had to do these myself, so they don't have the pictures on there like they normally do. Okay, this over here. There we go. Okay, so nutrition involves nutrients, and nutrients are chemicals that are supplied from the environment that an organism requires for survival. So the things that we eat and drink are the nutrients that we're talking about here, and they provide you chemicals that you need to survive. They can be divided into two different sections, or two types. One type you need in large amounts, and these are called the macronutrients. So macronutrients required in large amounts, and these involve carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So there are your blanks. And we'll talk about each one of these individually, but this is just an overview. Then the other category is called micronutrients, and they are required in small amounts. And these include vitamins and minerals. So pause now if you aren't quite ready yet. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, and you've all heard about it, and you're going to be looking at these when you do your food diary, are calories. So the definition of a calorie is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of a gram of water by 1 degree. So that's the official definition of a calorie. And the picture you see on your screen is a drawing of what's called a calorimeter. And this will measure calories. So they have a picture here of the nut. So here's your nut right here, a peanut. This is a very basic one you could do yourself. If we were in lab, we would probably be doing this instead of looking at the picture of it. But you stick a needle in a cork and you put your food item on the needle, and then you can heat this up. These holes are here for you to put a match in and set the food on fire, and the heat goes up to this container of water, and you've got a thermometer in there. And so as this piece of food is burning, it's going to make the water heat up, and the number of degrees that it raises that, if it's a gram of water, is how many calories it has. So if you have 1 gram of carbohydrate, that will equate to 4 kilocalories, and it's actually kilocalorie. We just call it calories because it's easier, but if you see kcal, that's the same thing as calories. So when you're looking at nutrition labels, you may be doing that as part of one of the activities you're doing. So if you see kcal, just know that it's the same thing as calories. So a gram of carbohydrate is equal to 4 calories. So you can actually measure how many calories are going to be in a particular amount of carbohydrate with this conversion factor. These are just conversion factors. You are going to be doing some calculations for that in your food diary project, so if you need to come back to this particular explanation, you can. But if we know that 1 gram of carb is equal to 4 calories, and we know we have 50 grams of carbs in a particular food, then we would just take 50 times 4, and that would be 200 calories. So that's all. It's just a matter of multiplying and dividing with this conversion. A gram of protein will give off the same amount of heat as carb, 4 calories. So again, if you have a piece of chicken that has 20 grams of protein in it, then you know that it's going to equal 80 calories because you do 20 times 4. Fat has more energy in it, as we'll see, and what that will mean is that it's going to raise this temperature more. It'll heat the water up more than a carb or a protein will, and so that conversion factor for 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 kilocalories or 9 calories. So these are your basic numbers, conversion factors that you'll be using within this unit's work. Essential nutrients, one other point, and then you'll fill in the chart you see on your notes. Essential nutrients are nutrients that your cells cannot synthesize or make. You have to eat them. And so we'll talk about this a little bit later as far as what's essential and what's not essential. So that word has a little bit of a different meaning, essential, and as we know it now, within this current event that we're in, essential means it's necessary, it's needed. So your essential workers are ones that need to go to work, need to do their job at their job site. In this particular thing, it's essential for you. You need them, and you can't make them, so you have to eat them. So that's how that kind of equates to that definition. On your notes, then, you have this chart of the macronutrients, so I'm going to look at each one individually, and I'll just be adding to the chart, so you will only see a section at a time on the slide, on the video, but you have the whole thing in front of you. The first one we're going to talk about is carbohydrate, and those can be broken down into sugars and starches. So if there's words up here that you don't have on your notes, please be sure and fill those in. We're going to talk about the building blocks of these macronutrients. The macronutrients that you see listed in the category are big. Some really big, some not so big, but the big ones are always built on these building blocks. Think of a Lego, Legos that you put together, and the individual Lego bricks would be like the building blocks of your macronutrients. So it's the smallest thing that's present that will be put together to make the big thing. That Lego brick, you can't get any smaller than that unless you take a hammer and smash it, but that's the smallest that it comes, and so that's the same thing as what these building blocks are. The sugars are pretty small carbohydrates in general. Their building blocks are called monosaccharide. Mono means one, sac, S-A-C-C-H, that root word means sugar. So these are one sugar. That's what the word monosaccharide means. The use for sugars in your body, it's a very quick source of energy. That's why if you eat something with a lot of sugar, sometimes you feel that sugar rush because it's providing you a lot of energy very quickly. The bad thing is it doesn't last very long. And so you typically will want something else that will store energy for you, and we'll talk about that in just a second. The sources for sugars will be fruit. That's why it tastes sweet. Some are sweeter than others. Honey, milk sugar, when you drink milk or eat any kind of dairy product besides cheese, because that's been aged, but like yogurt, milk, those sorts of things. Then they taste sweet. They have milk sugar in them. It's called lactose. Beets are vegetables that are very sweet. Carrots tend to be sweet as well. And then sugar cane. That's where we get our table sugar that you use for baking or just putting in your drinks. Starches are also a type of carbohydrate, and you can get them from animals and plants. Okay. They are also built by monosaccharides all put together. There's one activity, this unit, a lab where you can create paper models of these different macronutrients, and so you will be cutting out, drawing or printing and cutting out the building blocks and putting them together to make these large macronutrients. So starches are built by the same building blocks as sugars. There's just more of them put together to make a starch a bigger molecule. This is where we get stored energy So you will when you eat food, if it's already in a simple sugar form, like a piece of fruit or processed food where they add sugar to it, table sugar or sucrose is what that's called, then your body will break that down very quickly right off the bat for energy. If you have more, and it'll break it down into the monosaccharide glucose. If you have more glucose than you need for your body, then you will store it first in your muscles. Okay, we're animals, so animal starch is stored in our muscle. It's called glycogen. You'll also store some in your liver. If you keep eating more glucose than you need for even that, then your body will store it in your fat cells. And so that's how people gain weight if they eat a lot of sugary, or carb food that's very rich in sugars and starches. And not all starches are made equally, and we'll talk about that later. Or you'll see one of those in an activity this unit. But your source for starches would be grains and vegetables for plants, and then meat. If you eat meat, you're eating some of the animal starch. It's not a lot of it versus eating a piece of bread or a bunch of broccoli and a big salad. You'd get more of it than you actually would with meat. So a lot of people think of starch, they automatically think bread or biscuits or any kind of bread product, but fruits and vegetables are also considered starches as well. They're considered carbohydrates. They are very, they don't make your blood sugar go up really high, so you don't get that sugar rush that you would see with carbs, with sugars, because it takes time for your body to break those down into the glucose. So those are carbohydrates, and there's a picture here you can see of the different kinds of foods that are very rich or high in carbohydrates. All right, our next category are the lipids, and you have three basic types of lipids. Waxes are another type, but I'm not going to count that here or include that here. Our first one we consider lipids are fats. The building blocks, or the Lego pieces, if you will, of those are fatty acids and glycerol. And there's actually 3 fatty acids to 1 glycerol. And so because of that, there are the word that is called triglycerol. Triglyceride, sorry. Tri meaning 3. The use for this in your body is long-term energy storage. That's even longer than your starches. Your body will break any kind of sugar or starch first. The lipid it's going to put back for long-term energy storage in your fat cells. Sources of this will be animal fat. If you're eating a steak and you eat the fat off of that, you're eating animal fat. Also coconut. Even though it has a coconut oil, which you can buy everywhere now, it's kind of mislabeled. Typically, fats are considered solid at room temperature, and oils are technically liquid at room temperature. And those are usually solid ones are animals, and liquid ones are typically plants. But coconut is an exception to that. It is solid at room temperature, but it's a plant, so it's kind of a weird one there. But these are solids at room temperature, so just think of that. All the fat on the meat, that would be technically a fat. Then oils are a second category. They are also composed of these triglycerides, but the chemical makeup is a little bit different as far as the carbons and the hydrogens and the oxygens, so that makes them liquid at room temperature. They're also long-term storage, and typically all your other plant oils are liquid, so they're called an oil. The things that are in seeds and nuts, the lipids in seeds and nuts, are oils. Think peanut oil, almond oil, corn flour oil, corn oil. These are all of the oils from plants. Now, these typically aren't very stable either. They will go bad a lot quicker than your solid fats. So that's why you have to be careful storing oils that you use for cooking and stuff like that, and how high of a temperature can make it go bad too if it gets too hot. The third type of lipid is called cholesterol. I'm sure you're very familiar with this one. It's also composed of triglycerides, but the shape of it is more in a ring structure, and it contains an additional protein section on it, but it looks a little bit different. Again, you'll see this in another picture. The use for that, you need cholesterol to build your cells, and also for hormones. Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are all hormones that are made of cholesterol. So you do need some cholesterol in your body. The places you can find that: liver, egg yolk, dairy, and meat. Typically animal products only have cholesterol. So those are your lipids. Our next category, here's a picture of some meats, nuts, and seeds, some oil here. The avocado is a really good, it's a really healthy fat for you to eat, and pumpkin seeds and other kinds of seeds. Okay. The last section is protein. There's not any different types of proteins, but they are made of, their building blocks are called amino acids. There are actually 20 different amino acids, and the way you put all these together in different amounts can give you a huge variety of proteins. Your body has a ton of things that it needs proteins for, so having this huge ability to make a variety of them with the number of amino acids there are is a great benefit to us. Now, 8 of them of the 20 are essential, which, remember, that means you can't make it, you have to eat it. So 8 of those you have to eat in your diet to get all of your proteins. The use: building structures, enzymes, hormones, antibodies, and the source for different proteins are meats. Obviously, meat is protein, it's muscle. Dairy products have protein. Nuts, eggs, beans, and grains. Beans and grains don't have complete proteins. Your animal products will have all of the 20 that you need, so that's why those are really good sources of amino acids, because all 20 are there. Your plant proteins from beans and grains do not have all 20. They're missing some of those. So if you are a vegan and you only eat plant products, you have to be sure that you combine the plants in the correct way in order to get all 20 of those amino acids, or take pills. I guess you could do that too. An example of a meal that would be a vegetarian meal that would have all of your proteins would be like rice and beans, beans and cornbread. Those are combinations that provide all of the amino acids that you need without eating an animal product. So those are your macronutrients. Just a quick look at those. As you're progressing through the activities with this unit, you'll become more familiar with sources of them and how they're put together and those sorts of things. Okay, let's look then at the micronutrients. This is the second page of your notes at the top. We mentioned those are things you need in small amounts, and examples are vitamins and minerals. Vitamins are organic compounds that are required in small amounts for normal cell metabolism. So you need vitamins, but these are organic. This is different from the minerals, which are inorganic. The vitamins are divided into 2 different categories based on their solubility, what they dissolve in. One type is called fat soluble, and these obviously will dissolve in fat. The good thing is that you can store these up because it stays in your fat tissue. The bad thing is if you eat too much of it. A lot of people will take mega doses of these vitamins thinking that it's helping their nutrition, when in fact they can be built up to toxic levels, and you can have some severe side effects as a result of that. So you have to be careful and not eat too much of this stuff. These include vitamin A, D, E, and K. The second category is called water soluble. These will dissolve in water. And so if you have excess amounts of these in your system, then you will just pee them out. And so that's why if you do take vitamins, and sometimes you notice that your pee is very, very yellow, it's probably because some of the extra vitamins that were in your capsule, you don't need them. Your body doesn't need it, so it's getting rid of the excess there, and they tend to color your urine very bright yellow. Now, it's also very dark whenever you are dehydrated, but that's kind of it's dark versus the excess vitamins. It tends to be very bright yellow. The examples for this are all of your vitamin Bs. There's several different vitamin Bs. There's B1, B2, B3, and riboflavin, niacin, thiamine. Lots of these. These are very predominant. You can see all these Bs over here. You see are mostly plants. Lots of plant products have vitamin B. And then vitamin C you find in citrus fruits mostly. Or other fruits do have it too, but citrus fruits are the highest. This picture just kind of shows you the biggest source for these vitamins. Okay, vitamin A, you notice peppers, they typically will have an orange pigment to them, or yellow. You have vitamin A in the yolk of the egg. Vitamin E, sunflower, onions have lots of vitamin E, so sunflower oil, if you use that for anything, then you're going to get a lot of vitamin E there. Vitamin K is mentioned up there. You get beets, wheat, and actually coffee has a lot of, and tea has some vitamin K in it. Vitamin D is your dairy product, so butter, the eggs, and also milk has a lot of vitamin D. So these are your vitamins. The next slide is looking at minerals. The way it's different from vitamins is that these are inorganic. So remember that, or you may, if you remember from chemistry, organic compounds typically will have carbon in them in their molecular structure. There are some examples, like carbon dioxide has carbon, but it's inorganic. Minerals or inorganic compounds typically do not have carbon. And so you're looking at a lot of minerals here. They are essential in metabolism, and they come from the soil. So how do we get it? Well, you can go eat dirt, but plants that are grown in soil, they have the minerals in them. And then if you eat meat, the animals that ate the plants will have the minerals in them too. So that's why I mentioned to you that at the beginning slide said you really are what you eat, because all of the stuff you put in your mouth is a combination of everything that it ate or it produced from the sun if it was a plant, or got from the soil. And so all of that food is broken down, as you learn in the digestive system. All of that stuff is broken down by your enzymes and your mechanical digestion to break it down into those monosaccharides and the triglycerol and the amino acids, the building blocks. And that's what you absorb when you have that absorption taking place in your small intestine. And your body will take those building blocks that you got from your food and convert it or build it into something that you need. So everything in your body, your structure, your enzymes, how it works, has come from molecules that you've eaten. So you are what you eat. These are some of your major minerals. So as far as some characteristics of minerals, most of them are concentrated in the bones in your teeth, in your bones and teeth, to give structure, because minerals typically are very hard, solid substances. Part of the structural materials of all your body cells, so you need minerals to build all your body cells. They make up parts of enzymes. Remember, these are things that speed up a chemical reaction without becoming part of the reaction itself. All of your enzymes that break down your food, the digestive ones you learned about in the last unit, would be part of these. They also contribute to the pressure of your body fluids. They maintain the pH of your body fluids. And they are important for nerve conduction, muscle contraction, and blood coagulation, which is clotting. So calcium, zinc, iron, all of these things you need for all of these purposes. If you recall back in their circulatory system, we did the beginning of the year, you need to have, or in the muscles at the end of the fall, you need calcium for your muscles to contract. And if you don't have enough, it will take it from your bones. We talked about that in relation to osteoporosis. The major minerals are the ones that you need in larger amounts. Even though it says larger amount, this is still a tiny amount compared to your macronutrients, your carbs, lipids, and proteins. These are calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. These are all your major minerals. The picture that you see on these slides gives you some examples of foods that where you would find these minerals. And then your trace minerals, which are ones that you need in minute amounts. That word there is not minute, it's minute. Tiny, 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 even teeny tiny little amounts. This includes iron, manganese, copper, iodine, cobalt, zinc, fluorine, selenium, and chromium. Okay, hit the pause button if you're not quite ready, but I'm going to keep going at the very last part of this section. Is talking about malnutrition. The definition of malnutrition is simply poor nutrition that results from a lack of essential nutrients. Those are ones that you have to eat, remember, or an inability to use the nutrients. So you're either eating too much or too little period, or too much bad stuff, so you're not getting those nutrients that you can't make because you're eating poor quality food all the time, or if you have some sort of thing. Hold on just a minute. Sorry about that. You heard my dog. If you have some sort of illness, sometimes that can help you prevent from eating or from actually using the nutrients, even though you've eaten them. Part of that, the undernutrition, is when you have a deficiency or not enough nutrients. Overnutrition is when you have an excess or too many nutrients. And so doctors use what's called the BMI, body mass index, to determine if you're overweight, underweight, normal, or obese. And what they use is height and weight, but you have to remember that muscle weighs more than fat. So if you're weighing yourself and you're a buff dude or woman here, like this picture here, you could actually have the same BMI as a person who is mostly composed of fat, an obese person. So the BMI is not the best picture of determining if you're overweight or underweight. Okay, so just keep that in mind too as you're doing some of the activities. And in the future, if you say, well, your BMI is this, you're like, well, I'm made mostly of muscle, so I'm not going to worry too much about being overweight or unhealthy because you're considered obese or overweight when you're really not. You're just weigh a lot more because you have more muscle mass. That is the end of our notes for nutrition. You will be doing a web quest that's mandatory. It will help you get around the MyPlate website because you're going to use that for your food diary project, which is also mandatory. And then you have 4 other activities. Besides that, you can pick 2 like you've been doing before. So hope you're doing well, and we will talk soon.